welcome to the BoshNRoll channel. If you want to support my daily Eternal Magic offerings while getting amazing perks like the BoshNRoll Discord community, have me play your deck on the channel, or listen sideboard guides before tournaments, check out the Patreon or YouTube membership program. This channel is possible because of these amazing sponsors. Check them out, all their links are in the video description. As always, thanks for being here. Let's go play some Magic. Hey everyone, welcome to the long-awaited Banned and Restricted update video. Before we go in, I just have to say, I just recorded for almost an hour talking into the microphone, just my thoughts live, and realized at the end that I had my microphone duplicated in my recording sessions. So I had two instances of my microphone recording the same thing at the same time. That mostly means very little, but there are a couple spots where the audio might sound slightly echoey, and I'm sorry for that, but like I said, I just talked for nearly an hour in one take, and that's not possible to fix. I did some back-end stuff to try to reduce the echo in post, but if it's a little weird, sorry, it should still be fine. Now enjoy the video. Welcome back to the BoshNRoll channel. It's finally here, the long-awaited March 31st, 2025 Banned and Restricted update that we were all pretty sure would affect Legacy. We were all certain would affect Modern. Let's talk about what actually happened. I'm releasing this April 1st, the day after the announcement itself. I'll also be discussing the same topic with Phil of Thraben U and Bryant of the Epic Storm on the Eternal Glory podcast this week. Check it out. It'll come out on Friday. First of all, good sign. There are names on this article. There was a period where Banned and Restricted updates were released as nameless, faceless announcements from Wizards of the Coast. Carmen, Jadine, Arya, and Eric, all people who have social media presences and faces that we can interact with. Feels good. I'll do the short part first, then we will actually get into the reasoning. Standard, no changes. A little surprising. A lot of people thought that Monstrous Rage was a foregone conclusion, and Up the Beanstalk or This Town Ain't Big Enough were also on the chopping block. No changes. Pioneer, no changes. Modern, Underworld Breach, we all knew that was going to happen. Nothing went with it. We'll talk about that in a minute. Legacy, Sowing Mycospawn. Oh my goodness. Smell you never, you big, smelly piece of shit. That one's gone. And Troll of khazad-dum, banned as well. Something had to go out of Reanimator, and they went with Troll. Vintage, no changes. Another very exciting thing. Vintage feels great right now. I'm glad they didn't mess with it. And then the real bomb drop is actually Pauper out of left field. I've been saying for a little while now, I think Pauper is 1.5 cards away from being a really good format. The Pauper panel agreed with half of my assessment. Deadly Dispute was the half card. I call it half a card because there's so many replacements for this card that it seemed weird to single it out. But they did agree with that. They left Makeshift Munitions, and then they also killed Basking Brood Scale, Kuldotha Rebirth, and unbanned Prophetic Prism and High Tide. Very exciting stuff. Then there's a bunch of fake formats nobody cares about. Now into the meat of the explorations. Starting with, howdy, my name is Carmen Comparens. We have a person. This is so exciting. Little intro for Carmen. More will be discussed today. At the time of this video releasing, I released at 10 a.m. Eastern, and they're doing their thing at 10 a.m. Pacific. So 3 hours after this video drops, you'll have a real chat with the Wizards people on Weekly MTG. Go check that out if you want more info. I'm going to kind of go fast. I'm not reading this live. I have had a little bit of time to read and digest these statements. The big takeaway from Standard is this sentence right here. We are committed to leaving the format as untouched as possible from one rotation to the next, banning cards only if something truly problematic to the health of the format emerges. Once a year, right before rotation, we'll consider more nuanced changes. That's a really interesting and exciting thing. There are cards like Monstrous Rage that I mentioned, like Up the Beanstalk that I mentioned, that under different ban philosophies might be over the line. Like if they were just trying to clip things and keep things rotating, if something or a set of some things was so much better than the next replacement, they could clip that and make people get creative. But they are staying committed. The balance of the red mouse deck versus the big Beanstalk control deck versus the Esper bounce deck with This Town Ain't Big Enough, like those things they push and pull from the metagame, this town did not make any penetration into the top 8 of the last Pro Tour. The last Pro Tour was won by 5-color Beanstalk. That deck has been pushed back in line, and they are just letting the metagame breathe. That is pretty cool. Pioneer, there's some stuff here. I honestly have not really thought about Pioneer since the regional championship in DC. It was that middle of last year. It's been a long time since I had any reason to think about this format, and they don't seem worried about anything. Modern, Underworld Breach, duh. They said they're happy with the placement of Green Sun Zenith, boosting existing archetypes, Faithful Suiting, rejuvenating old archetypes and creating new ones. But they don't like how Mox Opal overlapped with Underworld Breach. I saw modern players asking for something out of the Boros Energy Shell, maybe Flage or the Arena of Glory that makes the Flage really good. I didn't hear a lot of chatter about anything other than that. Like, Underworld Breach was obviously true, and then some people asking for something out of Boros, but they're letting this breathe as well. We're planning on keeping an eye on decks that were strong enough to hang despite Teamer grinding Breach's prevalence, Boros Energy and Dimir Oculus decks, as well as Eldrazi variants, Amulet Titan, and Orzhov Blink. They're watching red-white energy variants the closest to see if reasonable counterplay emerges in the coming regional championship qualifier season. We're excited to see what players cook up. So they did directly call out the deck that a lot of people wanted something, taking action against it right now, but they are, as they have lately, doing a light touch rather than a huge change. It's just been pretty consistent that unless they are completely revamping the format, which the last modern ban list did do, they've been taking a pretty light touch. If there's like one obvious problem and then 4 things that might be a problem, they only touch the one. If there's 2 obvious problems and then 4 things that might be an obvious or a less obvious problem, they only take the 2. They have just been skimming off the top, and they're continuing to do that here, but at least acknowledging the decks that they're aware of. The BoshNRoll channel is brought to you by Tales of Adventure. TOAMagic.com has almost 100,000 unique cards in stock. They offer free track shipping on every order, plus next day or 2-day options when you have an event coming up fast. They offer on-site pickup at major Magic events throughout the US, so you're never scrambling before your tournament. Stop by their booth to buy, sell, or trade at upcoming regional championships, Magic Con, Spotlight Series, and more. I love their selection of individually scanned high-end cards that show you exactly what you're buying. And the best part is saving 5% on every order with promo code BOSH. From Ancestral Recall to Zombie Master, get what you need quickly and in one place at TOAMagic.com. Eternal lives here. And now, Legacy, the thing that affects me and most of my viewers the most. Troll of khazad-dum is banned. Sowing Mycospawn is banned. Immediately start off by saying, by the numbers, Legacy looks like a balanced format. And this is something that we've been talking about both on this channel and on the Eternal Glory podcast for quite a while now, where if you look at the actual metagame, there are a bunch of decks with between 6 and 10% of the meta. A lot of different decks are winning tournaments, but those decks all have something in common, which is they like to decide the game on or around turn 2, if not sooner. And that's where this sentence comes in. The issue is that despite having several different decks, the format's slower macro archetypes like midrange and control have been pushed out of the metagame as environmental pressures have wildly condensed the games. That's what we've been saying for months. And that leads to player sentiment and event attendance has trended downward. It's apparent to us that people who love to play Legacy do not love to play today's Legacy, so we're taking a couple of steps to try and improve the format. This first sentence says, Troll of khazad-dum has been a big part of Legacy for 2 years, with some form of Dimir Reanimator being the strongest deck in the format since approximately the release of Lord of the Rings, Tales of Middle-earth. What a cool thread to connect. Dimir Reanimator has been good for almost 2 years. Lord of the Rings was the summer set 2 years ago. It's currently March. Almost 2 years ago is exactly when Lord of the Rings came out, and that's when these reanimate shells started to break. Troll has an extremely unique impact on deck building, allowing players to fill their deck with cards like Reanimate and Animate Dead without having to play a bunch of big creatures. Imagine that. The combo deck getting super smooth, they get to cheat on their land count, Their Entomb is uncounterable. They get perfect mana. They can access basic Swamp under Blood Moon. Just so many things that let a combo deck just cheat on a bunch of fundamental deck building rules. I love this phrase, the subversion of opportunity costs. You don't have to play 8 monsters, so you always have one to loot away. You don't have to play Faithless Looting or Careful Study or anything like that. We saw Tainted Indulgence being briefly tried in the wake of the Psychic Frog ban, but Lisk quickly gave up on that. And here is the core of what we've been talking about the whole time. Obviously, something had to go to level out Reanimator, but would it be Entomb, Reanimate, or Troll? We believe that the Reanimator strategy is a core part of what makes Legacy feel like Legacy and is fun to have in the format. I agree. That is the argument I've been making basically the whole time. A lot of people feel strongly that Entomb needs to go. Entomb has been banned before. I think it would be understandable if it was banned again, but Reanimator is cool. I like that Reanimator exists, even if it annoys me personally to play against it, and I would not personally choose it. And many of the games don't feel particularly satisfying. It's like, did you have the correct type of interaction or not? But I do like that it exists. And up until Troll of Khazad-dum's printing, it wasn't a problem. It went from different levels of, it was a top deck for a minute, then it became like a tier 2 deck. For some amount of time, it was kind of a tier 3 curiosity, like, oh, we're playing as Reanimator. How quaint. This is fun. I hope I brought my Graveyard Aid today. I also like that Entomb is a card that can be used by other decks. Like, I've Entombed for Life from the Loam. I've Entombed for Punishing Fire. I have played against a bunch of people who are Entombing for Echo of Eons. It's cool that that toolbox exists. That's a small percentage of how I feel about Entomb. I mostly just think it's dope that Reanimator can exist as an archetype and that it's powerful enough without having to play a bunch of weird cards. Reanimator could continue to exist if Entomb was banned and they just had to play a critical density of monsters and loot effects, but I think Entomb really gives it that legacy feel. It's also a lot easier to ban Troll of Khazad-dum now and then ban Entomb later if you were wrong than it is to ban Entomb now and unban it later. Entomb is just such a big, flashy legacy card. It's a rare. It has a bunch of printings now. It was like a $40 card for a while. It's just a popular, powerful, cool card, and the value over emplacement's really high. Comparable effects like cost 2 and have restrictions, or cost 3, or a gamble. It's funny because you normally want to win your gamble, but if you were to replace gamble or Entomb with gamble in red-black Reanimator, you would want to lose your gamble, which is a lot harder than winning a gamble, especially early in the game. Entomb is just super cool, and I'm glad they took this route. And this basically means that Reanimator is going to have to be a combo deck again, instead of a tempo deck with a scary button it can hit. For those of you who weren't here before, if you've only been playing Legacy for 2 years, Reanimator will still cast things like Dauthi Voidwalker and Barrow-goyf out of the sideboard. They still have the juke plan. They may also juke into Show and Tell or Stronghold Gambit. Those are things these decks have done in the past before they had Troll of Khazad-dum to bridge and still be able to be a largely effective Reanimate deck post-board. Just heads up, don't cut your Swords of Plowshares in the sideboard games just yet, but we will get to see what this looks like. Real quick, before we talk about Sowing Mycospawn, I just want to shout out once again Gold Sabertooth, community artist who did the first ever BoshNRoll playmat. These things are awesome. They're felted like the old 90s Spellground mats. They are thick and stitched like the modern day top of the line mats. It's the best of old and new, featuring a bunch of cool BoshNRoll characters. We got Uro, Black Lotus, Rograk, Oath, and Ponder featured here, as well as me, with a bunch of Gold Sabertooth flavor. Picking one of these up, you get to fly the BoshNRoll flag wherever you go. You're supporting me. You're supporting Gold Sabertooth. Shout out to community creators all around. Thank you, everybody, for watching, as always. And if you are interested in flying the flag, the link to Gold Sabertooth's Etsy shop is in the video description. And now, Sowing Mycospawn. On the other side of format speed, Eldrazi and other colorless strategies have been prevalent in Legacy since they got a boost from Modern Horizons 3 last summer. Yes, I think that is safe to say. Generally speaking, these decks have presented the issue of completely sidestepping the rules of engagement in the format. Wow! Cast triggers on cheap things. This is the thing that drives me nuts. It's the cast triggers. The flavor of Eldrazi having cast triggers, going all the way back to Rise of the Eldrazi, is they're supposed to feel hard to stop. It's supposed to feel like, damn, even if I have the counterspell, they're still doing some damage. They are that big, that awesome, that powerful. And that was always true of Kozilek, Ulamog, and Emrakul, and then some of the other 10 plus mana ones. But the little ones, they didn't have that ability. The ones that cost 3, 4, 5 mana, things like Thought-Knot Seer, Kozilek's Predator, Emrakul's Hatcher, there were smaller Eldrazi too that had regular enters the battlefield abilities. To put the uncounterability, that extra sauce on the little ones, your Writhing Chrysalises, your Sowing Mycospawns, it just breaks the rules of the game so early. Like, I think if you have 10 mana to cast Kozilek, you should get something for the trouble, you know? But getting to 4 mana, and I say 4 mana because it's being cast off of Eldrazi Temple and Ancient Tomb, it's 2 mana in any practical deck building sets. Getting these uncounterable triggers for 4 mana or 3 mana or whatever is kind of heinous, and yeah, they're really hard to interact with. Good call out, Carmen. And for that reason, colorless strategies have positioned themselves to have the best inevitability in the format, with a good chunk of that inevitability coming from a single card. Sowing Mycospawn does it all in context of colorless Eldrazi. It can grab late-game cards like Ayavukin, some interactive lands like Blaststone of Karakas, but most frequently it's grabbing copies of Wasteland to exacerbate the strength of its land exiling effect. Look at that. We have the comparison from a Modern Horizons set of Wrenn and 6, a card that is good in Modern. Sometimes it's not even part of the metagame, sometimes it's a big part of the metagame, but it's always fine to good, and it was heinously broken and banned very quickly in Legacy. And the difference is Wasteland. Wasteland is a format pillar. It's one of the glues of Legacy. Imagine the mana bases we could get away with in Legacy if there was no threat of Wasteland. It would be the complete Wild West out here. Wasteland is a core glue card like Force of Will for balancing all the nonsense that could happen unchecked in the format. Which means cards that might be fine in Modern, which is where Sowing Mycospawn and Wrenn and 6 were designed for, will not be fine when compounded with a very commonly played obvious problem in the Legacy landscape. Mycospawn's land exiling effect can notably target basic lands, which is a class of card that is more fun when it's reliable out to other land-hating cards in the format like Wasteland and Blood Moon. Love that. Love hearing that from Wizards of the Coast. Playing basic lands, it comes with a risk. Like I just said, the mana base in Legacy are so good. Fetch land, dual land, fetch land, Triome, whatever. We can do some crazy stuff here. Ancient Tomb, Urza's Saga. The lands in this format are so good. It's a real cost to play an island in a deck rather than a Tundra, or an island rather than a Seat of the Synod, or whatever it is that you're comparing up against your basic island, your basic forest. Like, what if decks didn't have to play basic forest and they could just run 4 Besejus instead of 1 Beseju and 2 forests? They just get 3 Besejus in those slots. It can't be free. It's a real cost that I think in deck building you should be rewarded for if you go out of your way to make it work. And Sowing Mycospawn really broke those rules. It compressed games to the first handful of turns and putting the Magic play experience at risk. Putting the Magic play experience at risk. That's a nasty little sentence. Yeah, that is how I felt. Like, you're supposed to be able to put lands into play and do stuff. That's the Magic play experience. If you don't have lands, you can't do stuff. Mycospawn's out of here. And the final paragraph here is a good note. My wish list for this ban update was Sowing Mycospawn, Troll of khazad-dum, and Undercity Informer. I wanted to take Oops All Spells down a little bit of a peg too. Talk about undermining the Magic play experience. But they want to let this breathe a little bit. Like I said before, if there are 3 or 4 cards they could take, but 2 that are obvious, they're going to take the obvious 2 rather than go all 4. I also think my next tier after Undercity Informer and the 2 that actually did get banned was the One Ring and Nadu. I'm less enthusiastic about those at the moment, but I think there's a good chance the One Ring doesn't last the calendar year in Legacy. And Carmen acknowledged that as well. In the coming weeks, we'll be keeping an eye on the prevalence and win rates of the various all-in combo and fast mana decks that bubble to the surface of Legacy. Blood Moon Stompy and Oops All Spells are prime examples of decks that have seen their meta share rise in the past few months with the density of modal double-faced land cards in Modern Horizons 3, both currently within bounds of play rates and win rates that have been historically acceptable. Ideally, the above changes will create space for more counterplay against these decks over time. It's great to get this acknowledgement, even if we didn't get the action I was hoping for, and we'll see. My personal opinion about this is that unlocking control decks in the metagame is going to do nothing to slow down Oops All Spells. Oops All Spells was already pretty good at farming control decks, especially in their current iteration where they barely care about graveyard hate anymore. You used to be able to have like Force of Will plus Surgical and have a pretty good chance of surviving turn 0. Now that doesn't really do it anymore. If they could beat the Force, then they could beat the Surgical. We'll see how that shakes out, but I do think decks with a heavy basic land commitment do have breathing room versus Red Stompy. And the card that could still create a sub-game underneath the real game is the One Ring. And I'm not complaining. I am happy with this ban update. I'm just saying my cascading cause and effect next order consequences brain is already thinking about the One Ring. And I'm happy to let it breathe for a while as well and see how this plays out.
This video is sponsored by Moxfield.com, the easiest way to build Magic decks online. Moxfield supports over 30 formats, including Legacy and everything else you'll see on this channel. There's multiple customizations so you can interact with your deck how you want. Views such as text, grid, or stacks, and groupings like type, subtype, color, color identity, even artist. The site offers light mode, dark mode, and so much more. However you want to see your deck, Moxfield can provide it for you. Follow my Moxfield to keep up with the channel and what I'm playing in paper. I'll see you there.
And here's another big one with Vintage. This is important because we don't actually have the date of the next ban and restricted update in this article. I think it's going to be discussed on the weekly MTG broadcast later today. But we have a Black Lotus tournament, the NYSE Open, happening in June. And then we have another Black Lotus tournament, the Steel City Spectacular, happening in August. I think mid-June we'll be safe from any possible changes to the Vintage format, which means that the format we have as of today will be the format for NYSE. August, I think that's a long way off. That's 5 months off. There should be a scheduled BNR update before then. And mid-August, if Vintage changes, we'll know, but we can at least really start digging into doing the work for people trying to win that Black Lotus at NYSE. By the way, links to sign up to both NYSE and the Steel City Spectacular are in the video description. It's pretty dope that you could win 2 Black Lotuses this summer. Someone better come stop me because I'm trying to take them both. And Steel City Spectacular, if you haven't seen that one yet, if you don't play Vintage, there's Legacy, there's CEDH, there's Old School, there's no banlist EDH. There's a lot of Eternal Magic to be had that weekend. Check out the links in the video description for that. Onto this paragraph itself, or this statement itself. The only card mentioned here in all of this is Lurrus. They had some conversation about Lurrus and its place in Vintage. They restricted Urza's Saga, so Lurrus decks were harder to make really busted. It's harder to go big in a deck that can only play 2-drops if Urza's Saga isn't cranking out reliable 6/6s, 7/7s, 8/8s, etc. as a 4-of. And that did happen. The Lurrus meta share has increased since the Urza Saga restriction, but it's not all the same deck. There are a bunch of different Lurrus decks. There's a bunch of ways to build decks. There are bug decks with Lurrus. There are bug decks without Lurrus. Do you think Oko and Leovold are good enough to replace having the companion? That's a real deck building decision to be made. The Lurrus decks themselves, we have Paradoxical Outcome, we have Control, we have Breach. There's a bunch of different ways to play Lurrus, and the top deck in Vintage right now doesn't play Lurrus. It's Raker Shops. At least by play rate, that is the top deck. And then there's a bunch of stuff about just the philosophy of banning a card for power level in Vintage. They basically said, we do have the precedent. We have done it before. We can do it again if it's necessary, but we don't currently think it's necessary. No mention of Stock Up here, which is a card that a lot of folks have been, I think, overreacting to ever since Aether Drift came out. Stock Up has given Paradoxical Outcome and those big blue decks a really exciting new tool to play with. And Dig Through Time is the obvious comparison. That card is restricted. Is Stock Up too good? I do not think so. Is Stock Up good? Obviously. And it's interesting that it was not even mentioned here as something that they had to talk about. And I love that for the Vintage format. I'm very excited for NYSE. Now that this announcement is clear, I could really start figuring out what I'm going to play for that tournament. Feels good. And then Pauper got the serious heat. Basking Brood-Scale banned, Golgotha Rebirth banned, Deadly Dispute banned, unbanned Prophetic Prism, and unbanned High Tide. This is a separate article where Gavin Verhey wrote basically as much about Pauper as the entire rest of everybody wrote about all other combined formats. Look at this article. This is so many words. I did read this. I'll do the TLDR. Basically, none of these decks were out of win rate bounds, but they were creating undue pressure on the metagame. Basking Brood-Scale plus Sadistically is an infinitely large creature plus infinite colorless mana that can happen very early in the game. This constricted what you could do. You had to be able to interact with this or else your deck was garbage. So they just got rid of it. I actually thought Brood-Scale was really cool for Pauper and offering something like this that you had to think about and had to move around and is interactable by something as simple as Lightning Bolt was really exciting to me. But I understand that not every deck necessarily can play cards like Snuff Out and Lightning Bolt, which to me kind of seems like, what is your Magic deck if you don't have room for a single piece of interaction? Like, are you up to any good yourself if you can't Lightning Bolt a Basking Brood-Scale? But I understand that within the shells and within context of everything, it's more of the Splinter Twin issue of Splinter Twin wasn't banned in Modern originally because it could win games on turn 4. It was banned because it could win games at any time starting at turn 4 while also doing other cool stuff that was powerful enough in the format. And within that, I could see how it's not about does your deck have Lightning Bolt in it, it's can you leave up a single red for Lightning Bolt for the rest of the game once your opponent is showing Brood-Scale mana. And I can see how that would constrict things, and it's out of here. Deadly Dispute is the next one. Deadly Dispute plus Ichor Wellspring. Ichor Wellspring's not banned, but the combo of Deadly Dispute plus Ichor Wellspring, Gavin does a great job saying that this package shows up in like 6 of the top 7 or 8 decks. Even though the decks are doing something different, the fact that these 8 slots are basically locked, and then you do like whatever it is your deck actually wants to do around this is kind of constricting and toxic. And then there's the comparison of Ichor Wellspring could be replaced with Mephitic Draught, just a very comparable card. Deadly Dispute obviously has Eviscerator's Insight and Record's Bargain and a bunch of other similar things, but leaving behind a treasure is so much better than leaving behind a map or leaving behind nothing or gaining life passively that they've decided to just take the most egregious edge off of this package before trying to attack the rest of the package. None of these decks die, which I think is really cool. Like Deadly Dispute banning, you can just play the other replacement cards, but they will be slightly worse. And I think that's a really smart way to attack that. And then Golgotha Rebirth. Again, some language about format polarity and speed. The hyper-fast aggro deck, and Gavin smartly called out Goblin Tomb Raider, Reckless Lackey, and Clockwork Percussionist. All cards printed in the last couple years that really filled out the depth of 1-drops with haste and or card advantage attached that this deck gets access to. This is the red aggro deck. Should it also have access to Golgotha Rebirth plus Goblin Bushwhacker? At any point from 3 mana and 2 cards in hand, they can 8-ball you. That means like if you spend your turn casting a Pyroclasm to kill all of these things, like if your opponent goes Tomb Raider, lackey, percussionist. Turn 1 and then turn 2, one of each of these. They've bashed you for 5 already. And then you spend your third turn wiping them out. And then for 2 cards at 3 mana, they whack you for 8. And it leaves 4 power in play. It's really hard as anyone trying to play any sort of fair Magic, because answering 3 aggressive threats like this, especially with one of them replacing itself immediately in the format, was already kind of a big ask. And then the fact that they could just drop this at any point after that, it's really tough. And it's cool that you don't have to worry about these Bushwhacker lines quite as hard, and you can play against them like they're a heads-up value engine-based red aggro deck. This was not on my radar. I honestly wasn't that worried about it, but it is a smart one, and it's cool that it's gone. Then there's a lot of talk here about the bridges from Modern Horizons 2. Are they worth the squeeze? They are propping up some archetypes, but they are also just obviously powerful artifact engines. Writhing Chrysalis. Gavin is well aware of this card. A lot of people have been asking for this card to get banned. But I think if you just have to worry about big creatures coming out of ramp decks instead of Writhing Chrysalis laying up a Brood Scale combo deck, then it's a lot more reasonable. And I love this. For a long time, Pauper had a mid-range gap. Things were either compressed in quick, aggressive decks or in very long game decks like Tron. And Writhing Chrysalis does fully occupy that mid-range. It's big enough to tangle with a Mirror Enforcer. That's pretty insane. There's not a lot that on rate could keep up with that card. And there are things you could do. Like you can kill this with removal. You can win over the top of it. You could try to go bigger. You could try to go under. It's obviously very powerful, but existing a mid-range instead of a ultra-late game or ultra-early game deck in the Pauper format is something that is a really smart observation from Gavin and the Pauper panel. And this final line here, I expect Chrysalis to be a cornerstone card of Pauper. It's strong, but it's locked into 2 colors and fills an important role. We are not planning to ban it currently unless the shape of the format dramatically changes. This is not a warning. This is not a we have our eyes on it. This is new normal, kids. Get used to it. Figure out how to beat Writhing Chrysalis because we're not worried about it right now. That's what he said there. And they introduced this cool new idea, trial unbans. And what they mean by that is we're unbanning this card, but we will be looking very closely for the next 3 months or so and reevaluate if the card should remain unbanned. And we'll share our expectations of what we are hoping happens with that card and compare that to the reality. This is different than an unban. An unban is a statement of, we think this card is fine now, and get used to it, it's back. This is, we're not sure if this card is fine, but we want to try it. And I really appreciate that energy coming from the Pauper format panel. And of course, big one, High Tide. This is itself a combo enabler. I have done no theory crafting. I don't know if this is even good or something we're going to be doing, but Cloud of Fairies, Peregrine Drake, and Frantic Search are all banned now. Snap is still legal. You could play 8 Red Blasts, just kind of already telling us a little bit of deck building advice and a little bit of counterplay advice here in the article. Thanks, Gavin. I don't know what people are going to do with High Tide, but it is cool that it exists. If it does nothing, then it's a great unban. If it does something medium, then it's a great unban. If it does something busted, we'll talk about it again in 3 months. Smart. Prophetic Prism is an interesting one that they're experimenting with. This was, for the longest time, a cornerstone of the Affinity and Tron decks. Like, I was playing Pauper a lot when this card was a staple. And powering up Affinity and Tron is a risky place to place your bets. But a couple of years ago, Affinity was kind of a 5-color aggro deck that really struggled to get mana out of its functionally basic land mana base. Like, if you're playing like Tree of Tales and Great Furnace and Ancient Den, all in a deck that's also trying to cast Thoughtcast, you were actually casting spells of 4 or 5 colors with lands that only tap for 1. And this was also before Deadly Dispute. It was before Bridges and before Deadly Dispute. Maybe Prophetic Prism isn't part of that engine anymore. And maybe Tron actually does need a little help, because Tron hasn't been much of anything in a while. And Energy Refractor, called out, has existed for a while. It's not as good as Prism, but it's comparable. And it has given them confidence that Prism is probably fine again. And again, I really appreciate a human sign-off. We've got Gavin, Alex, Alexandra. Emma, Mirko, Paige, and Ryuji. The Pauper format panel, human beings with a name. These are all links. You can find them. You could talk to them if you want to. Great work by the Pauper format panel. I think that's all I have to say here. Just breaking this down. I guess my mile-high view of the situation is they did a good job. They did the minimum, but it was the appropriate minimum. I will scoreboard a little bit here and say that Troll of khazad-dum and Sowing Mycospawn were both on my list of cards that I would have banned at the last ban update 3.5 months ago. And here we are, just catching up there. I wanted Grief gone 3 months before they actually banned it. I wanted Frog gone 3 months before they actually banned it. Troll and Mycospawn have now been banned 3 months after I asked for it. And we'll see where the One Ring and Undercity Informer or something out of Oops land. We'll see if we end up having the same conversation. And that's not like a rub-in or saying I know how to be a format balancer better than Wizards of the Coast employees do, because I really don't. It's just, it is somewhat validating to be out here in the trenches doing the work, playing the format, and then also seeing the things that I think are wrong with it, echoed by the people who actually make the game, even if they're slightly behind my cadence. Again, if you want another full discussion of this with back and forth with Thraben U and the Epic Storm, check out the Eternal Glory podcast on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. That'll be out this Friday. Thank you to Carmen, JD, and Aria and Eric and Gavin for writing these articles and putting names and faces to the thoughts and really writing useful paragraphs for us to digest about how they're thinking about these things. Everybody, thank you for watching. Magic gameplay returns tomorrow. I do have some stuff. Obviously, I record in advance. I think I have exactly one Legacy League coming out with the old bands. I think I have one Pauper League out there that is going to obviously come out with the old bands. But I've been recording a lot of Vintage Cube. I played some Dual Commander. I recorded some Pioneer. I've been trying really hard not to have the future things affected by what might have happened today too much. And we're mostly going to get away with it. I'll record some new Legacy tomorrow and release that Friday. And then new band stuff will be peppered in with the old band stuff as we flush the system here. Thank you all for watching. Thanks for sticking with me. Check out the BoshNRoll playmat on the Gold Sabertooth Etsy store. Check out these cool events, the NYSE and the Steel City Spectacular. And I'll see you next time.